Hey, welcome back everyone on day three. And today's day is dedicated exclusively for workshops. And I'm glad that we have Vinny from Brazil virtually over here. So the talk is about inflation and its impact on traditional science. But we could talk more about how it impacts the DeSci also. But so yeah, so actually it's been a long time I've been planning to organize something like this, and I'm really glad that we are able to initiate this conversation. So, without further ado, I'll like to hand over the stage to Vinny. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Evie. Thank you for your reception. Thank you for your introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see what you are building in India and especially in Kolkata. I just first want to ask everybody to be comprehensive that this is the first time I'm making a presentation fully in English. So it's challenging. I am a bit nervous, but I'm sure I'll be able to pass a clear message to you.
It's fine.
And it's
Our native language is also not English, so it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I hope we can understand, and we have been understanding ourselves very well. So I don't think we will have any troubles. I'll
Yeah.
share my screen now, so if you
Yeah. Uh-huh.
can make it live. One thing that I asked Evie is that if
Yeah.
you, for any motives or any reasons, want to interrupt me, or anybody from the audience want to make a comment or ask questions, please do it. I want to make it a talk, not um, a unilateral speech. So hope you enjoy. I'm excited about this. Let's talk about inflation's impact on traditional science, trade sci, and like Evie said, maybe let's also address how it impacts DeSci, that is the subject of discussion today. So first, who am I? I'm Vini Barbosa. I'm from Brazil, as I've said. I am a finance journalist and editor at Bimbo. I'm specializing in the decentralized economy since 2021 when I decided to fully dedicate myself to this life. I am also a volunteer community leader at the Nano Foundation. The Nano Foundation is a not-for-profit organization that is developing and building Nano, a cryptocurrency. And currently, I'm receiving 100% of my payments in crypto, all legal. Uh, I'm really living what I preach. So this is also something that we can talk about a little bit if you want, if we have time, because I have an extensive material to share with you, and I actually learned a lot doing this, building this material, and I want you to be open about challenging your beliefs, challenging your biases, challenge what you think you know, because I challenge what I think I know while building this. So I'll be making some thought exercises. Maybe somebody won't like it that much, but please be open-minded and bear with me in this experience, in this exercise. I want to divide the presentation in three phases. So the first, we'll be talking about the economic side of things, the the science of economics, what inflation means. Let's define inflation. Then we will address the problem, the issues that inflation brings to traditional science, and the proposed solutions with DeSci. And I want to also talk a little bit about Nano with you. Okay, can we go on?
Yeah, please.
So for I start, what is inflation? As we are talking about inflation, I think it's very important that we have a clear definition of what inflation is. And it's not as easy as some might think, because the definition of inflation may vary depending on who we are talking to. So as our first exercise, I'll give like 30 seconds for you. I'll be counting 30 seconds here in my phone. And I want you to look to the person next to you and briefly describe what do you understand by inflation. When you hear inflation, the word inflation, what do you understand of it? And when you say or you are talking about inflation, what do you mean by it? And if you are alone in your home watching, or somebody else, just say it out loud. How do you define inflation? What is inflation for you? I will give you 30 seconds.
Anyone?
Yeah. Hi, Vinay. This is Anand here. So my take on inflation, if I were to describe this to a layman, so it will be uh, the devaluation of purchasing power with time. Uh, that's my kind of interpretation.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody
Yeah.
else want to risk? 30 seconds are through, but we can have
Yeah.
one more if you want.
Hi, Vinny. I'm Priyanka. Uh,
Hello.
Hello. I am currently pursuing PhD in economics. So, according to economic terms, inflation is the increase in general price level of a commodity or in a market. So, according to economic terms, I can explain it like this.
Thank you very much.
Pranay.
Anybody else? I think we can continue.
I think I can talk about it. Yeah. I
Uh,
think he can also talk about the Bitcoin aspect, like if he tries to wants to relate it with
if
inflation.
you,
Yeah, yeah. You
uh,
tell it first. Go for the definition.
I can say, like, if you want to measure inflation, you can see the Bitcoin price. Because Bitcoin is a direct proportional to, like, it is a perfect solution for inflation, as Bitcoin helps in the economy, in the what we say business economy, purchasing power. We can consume our purchasing power in a world. So if we use same solution in a D science, in accordingly, so we can help to D science sector peoples to what we say, to consume their purchasing power, and that money can help them in future for benefit.
Okay, thank you. So we have like three definitions that are a bit different in how we say them, but more or less mean the same thing. That is the loss of purchasing power or the devaluation of commodities and currencies, right? So let's go with that. Why I'm saying that? Avi shared this beautiful chart in X, Twitter, former Twitter, that makes the difference of the science of economics and the economics of science. So the science of economics is how people decide to use limited resources like money, time, and materials to meet their needs and wants. And the economics of science is how money and resources are used to support science, like research and experiments. At this first phase of the presentation, we are doing science of economics. We are trying to understand how we humans relate to the limited resources as we have. And inflation is one of um, these topics of stud from science of economics. But we will also be talking about the economics of science, how the science of economics can affect the economics of science, and how money is allocated and resources are allocated to support science. So this is a very nice chart. I really recommend you to take a look in Evi's profile on Twitter, and go a bit dive into that. I won't be going so deep.
Yeah, I'll be sharing later. Yeah, definitely.
And this is important because I want you to mainly understand what I mean when I talk about inflation. So we can speak the same language here. And this is really important. Ludwig von Mises is one of the economists that mostly focus on trying to understand inflation and to define inflation. And he says the following: first of all, there is no longer any term available to signify what inflation used to signify. It is impossible to fight a policy you cannot name. I think most of us agree that inflation is not good for our economy, Maybe we can disagree on some aspects of it, but it's often not good. And we can't fight this not good thing, or mostly not good thing, if we can't define and if we can't understand it. So when we talk about inflation, we have currently mainly two definitions in economics. We have the Keynesian definition and the Austrian definition. The Keynesian definition is the most common definition by the mainstream media, by governments, by official entities and agencies that study economics. If you ask a central banker what inflation means, he will probably give you the Keynesian definition. The Keynesian definition says that inflation is the rise of prices of goods and services in the economy. So that's exactly how they define inflation: the rise of prices of goods and services in the economy. And they blame it. They say that this is caused by rising costs of production. It's fair. Prices in the economy may rise because their production cost has increased, or because of an increasing aggregate demand. And I think Bianca will be better than I to explain what aggregate demand is. I really don't want to go really deep into that because our limited time, but this is how the Keynesian definition of inflation is. When I say inflation, I am talking about the Austrian definition, okay? And this is also the most common definition in the cryptocurrency landscape, mainly because Bitcoin was built by people that believed in the Austrian School of Economics, and this is a cultural thing that we have, but we also have Keynesian enthusiasts in the landscape. So this is not a one-side thing. It's just the definition that I use when I talk about inflation, okay? And that's the definition we will be using today in this presentation. And this definition says that inflation is the increase in the monetary supply, which may cause the rise of prices. Not always. Inflation not always causes the rise of prices, because inflation is not related to the prices per se of goods and services. Instead, inflation is related to the monetary supply of the currency or commodity we are talking about. Price rises against this currency or commodity because it loses its purchasing power, like many of you said. So I think we are on the same page here. The definition by Mises lived in Vienna during one of the toughest inflations they saw. It was above 1,000% of inflation in 2 years. It was crazy. And Mises defined inflation as the following: in theoretical investigation, there is only one meaning that can rationally be attached to the expression inflation: an increase in the quantity of money that's not offset by a corresponding increase in the need of money. This is the demand. Sorry? Okay. So this is the need of money. I am hearing something. I don't know if somebody's talking or not.
ঠিক আছে, ভেজ মানুষ তো বেশি ছিলেন দেখলাম, হাফ হাফ করে দিন।
Let me know if you want me to stop, okay? So, finalizing the definition by Mises. So, data following the objective exchange value of money must occur. And this is the loss of purchasing power that we were talking about. Okay, this is the definition by Mises. And inflation, one of the things that occur in an inflationary economy is the Cantillon effect. And the Cantillon effect was described even before Mises described his definition of inflation. Richard Cantillon was the one bringing this concept, bringing the theory of the Cantillon effect, which more or less says the following: Changes in the money supply in an economy causes a redistribution of purchasing power, like we already saw, among people. And it disturbs the relative prices of goods and services. And now the most important thing for what we want to discuss here is that it leads to the misallocation of scarce resources. So in an inflationary economy, when we have the changes in the money supply, this inevitably leads to redistribution of purchasing power. That is, people getting more purchasing power while other people are getting less. And when we have that, resources might be misallocated. So in science or in research, in an inflationary economy, maybe some of these resources, some of this money may be misallocated due to the Cantillon effect. And the Cantillon effect says the following. In this diagram on the right of the screen, we have big circles, right? This big circle is the purchasing power. Each circle represents the purchasing power of each entity. So in the Cantillon effect, we first have the source of the supply increase, which could be the government or the central bank or some protocol that issues money over time. This source of supply increase has a bigger purchasing power than the rest of the chain. Following then, there will be its providers, the first people, the first entities that will receive this supply increase. They also have a larger purchasing power than the following chain, but they have less purchasing power than the source of the supply increase, and so on. We can have like companies and customers and researchers even more seeing their purchasing power tightening as the Cantillon effect goes, as the money is distributed from being inflationary, from the supply increase, and going on in this chain of production. Is this clear right now? How it impacts DeSci then? Here is a brief example that I want you to think about. So how this diagram impacts us in science, in research, in resources allocation. So for example, one case of Cantillon effect is a central bank prints money, and they can do that arbitrarily most of the time. Central bank gives money to governments. Governments arbitrarily fund science projects through their programs. But governments also sign contracts or create laws and regulations that benefit large corporations with strong lobby. These corporations get larger and richer. These corporations fund science projects aligned to their goals, which can be similar to the government goals as part of their lobby. What this creates mostly is an asymmetry of resources allocation that can drive researchers in the benefit of the entity that are most benefited from the Cantillon effect. The entities that have a higher purchasing power can literally drive research, drive science, being in a town, being in a university, being in a country, or being in the world. Science can literally be driving according to what these elites, we may say, want, and on what benefit them. And I'm not, this is not fairy tales, I'm not inventing things here. According to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, more than 60% of the research and development in scientific and technical fields is carried out by industry. Okay, industry is, according to this entity of research, industry is the leading funding source for research and science. 20% of it is from universities and 10% from governments. However, this is not a strict rule for all countries. Actually, developing countries, like it's the case of Brazil, like it's the case of India, like the case of Portugal and Mexico from the source I got this information, the industry contribution can be significantly lower. The poorer the country is, the more influence or more direct influence the government or one single central entity has over science funding. This gets worse and worse the poorer the country is. And this is a very sad reality that I see in Brazil. I'm not sure exactly how it is in India, but I think we may be more or less like the same. So this is a very current problem that we are facing. Got some data from India, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I got this data from 2023, last year, when the National Research Foundation in India got a $6 billion budget to fund science. When this law and when this regulation came, it was defined that 70% of the funding would need to come from private companies, while 30% would need to come from the government. However, all this is regulated by the government. There is only one entity, that is the National Research Foundation. There is a government entity that is regulating this budget. All this funding that comes from private companies, in this case, it doesn't matter that much where the fundings came, but more who is managing these funds and how it can impact science. And I think the impacts are very much similar, very much alike to what we have in other cases. What I'm talking about here is an asymmetry. An asymmetry where a few entities or a single entity can have very much, a lot more researchers than everybody else to fund science and create this impact of driving science as they wish, as they want. Okay, so this is the Cantillon effect in practice. And this is a problem that I believe DeSci is solving. And DeSci is not only solving this issue, but a lot of others that I'm sure you have been discussing in this event here. So how you promote the research, how you promote the scientists, how the scientists meet each other, how the scientists publish their researches, because this is another problem, not only funding. So I do believe DeSci can solve the funding part of science, the economics of science, as we said in one of our first slides. But DeSci is not completely free from this problem of funding. And I'll explain a little bit more. Do you want to revisit the inflation part now before we can move on? Avi?
Anyone?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. So yeah, we can just go through it again just briefly, right? Okay. Yeah.
Go to again the inflation or keep going?
Yeah. Any specific thing you want to revisit?
Yeah. Not exactly. But it's like a very eye-opening concept of the disallocation of resources. Like there's a French mathematician, I'm forgetting his name. He has a paper. He has a paper on economic model. I think that is quite related to inflation. He created a model based on the physics of entropy. How, like, by the very definition of entropy, like the measure of disorder, like how a concentrated pool uh, is shifted towards a particular entropic condition. And I think that model is quite similar to what you explained in the Cantillon model. It's the disallocation of resources. Like the resources are not exactly distributed equally. It tends to concentrate towards a certain pool.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. So I think that makes sense.
Thank you. That's a very valuable input. I'm not a mathematician, so I can't challenge that. But yeah, I think it makes sense, and thank you for your input. Nice. So DeSci is a solution, okay? But as I said in the beginning, I don't want to come here and say pretty things, beautiful things that everybody wants to hear and say, oh, how DeSci is beautiful. I want to really challenge your bias. I want to really challenge your knowledge here. So I'll be like the devil's advocate and try to look at DeSci from a critical perspective, using everything that we have discussed so far. Okay, don't hate me, please. So decentralized science solves different aspects of the asymmetry, okay, but it still holds some of the issues related to the monetary tools in the backbone of its systems, and not that they are equal to, for example, a fiduciary system or a fiduciary model. I don't think it is. Okay, I think central banks have a far more nefarious approach to inflation and the negative effects of it. But centralized science is not free from inflation issues. Okay, even in a lower scale, it can also be affected by it. This is something that I want you to have in mind. So whereas from central banks through fiat emission, or from market money or free money, or however you want to call it, through private or decentralized commodities like Bitcoin, for example, the Cantillon effect through inflation in the economy and science can be quite similar. Okay. On that, it's very interesting when we were talking about the Austrian economics definition, because not even among the Austrian, they 100% agree on the definition of inflation. Mises has a more broad definition of inflation. Mises consider even private money, even market money, okay, as part of inflation that can cause the Cantillon effect. But Murray Rothbard, for example, does not, or at least does not explicitly in most of his works. Rothbard is more focused on governments and central banks. Uh, so Rothbard mostly focus on the inflation side of things by arbitrary supply emission, okay, while Mises takes a more broad sense on every time a supply increases, this is inflation per definition. And he uses a gold mine example. I won't read it all, you can do it yourself. But Mises mostly explain what we saw in the Cantillon effect. So we have like gold miners finding gold. These gold miners will have more purchasing power, the owner of the mine, of course, not the miners themselves, because they will receive a payment from the owner of the gold mine, and when they do it, they are already losing the purchasing power from the recently discovered, from the recently mined gold. The employees receive a lower purchasing power value than the gold miner owner himself. And the companies that produce luxury goods or industrial material using the gold will also have will also be losing purchasing power in relation to the gold miner, to the gold mine owner. and so on. People who buy this luxury good, people who buy this gold, this jewelry, or things like that, will have the purchasing power of this gold also diminished over time. So this is a very clear demonstration and appealing, intuitive demonstration of how the inflation and the cantillon effect can also be in commodities like gold that are not necessarily controlled by governments, that are not arbitrarily uh, increase of supply. Okay, this is not arbitrary. Gold miners need to work to find gold and to get the benefits of this supply increase. But having to work does not at all erases the economic effects of the inflation. And I think this example by Mises demonstrate that very well. So how does this apply to DeSci? How does this apply to cryptocurrencies? How does this apply to Bitcoin? Bitcoin has an increasing supply. Okay, we have uh, a certain amount of Bitcoin circulating right now. We will have a maximum of 21 million Bitcoin circulating in 100 years or so. But these Bitcoin are not fully circulating yet. So every time more Bitcoin is rewarded to Bitcoin miners and enter the economy and enter the circulating supply, inflation is in play. Okay, and all the effects of inflation, including the Cantillon effect, are also in play. So how does proof of work works? Miner create more coins with the coin-based transaction from the block subsidy. The larger the miner, the higher the chances to mine a block and collect the unique reward. The more blocks they discover, the more they can reinvest. The richer they get, or more or better they can cover the costs to get bigger. This creates a vicious cycle that we call an economy of scale, where big entities become bigger over time. And this diagram illustrates that. So the Bitcoin miner mines, he collects inflation, collects the recently issued Bitcoin from the proof of work. They liquidate and spend it. When they do it, I don't know if we're seeing because I think the pictures are in front of it, but in the bottom of the screen there is Cantillon effect writing. So when these Bitcoin miners liquidate and spend the Bitcoin, the Cantillon effect is in play. Everybody that received this Bitcoin after the Bitcoin miner will have its purchasing power diminished if the demand remains zero. And this is important to say because when you talk about inflation and Cantillon effect, we are only talking about supply, okay? On economics, you have supply and demand. This is an equilibrium. The market is always thinking this equilibrium, demand and supply. The combination of both reflects in price or purchasing power. So here we are only talking about supply, okay? And on the supply side of things, the inflation and the Cantillon effect are pretty much the same dynamic, not the same scale as we talked before. Bitcoin has a far lower scale of inflation than government money, but it is still there. So if there is no demand, if we exclude the demand from the equation for this Terry experiment, the Cantillon effect is in play, and everybody that received this Bitcoin after the Bitcoin miner will have its purchasing power diminished. Of course, demand is also in play, and if the increase of demand in the Bitcoin system is higher than the inflated supply, Bitcoin price will increase, and the purchasing power of people holding Bitcoin will also increase. But hey, that's also true for fiat. If the demand for a fiat currency, being the dollar, being the Brazilian real, or whatever, if this demand is higher than what the central bank is issuing, this fiat currency will also increase in price over time, right? So that's why I'm not considering demand here, because demand has a lot of other influences and is a whole other factor. I just want to talk about supply. And I want to make it clear because this is usually the argument Bitcoin enthusiasts, mainly Bitcoin maximalists, use. And Bitcoin is not the only one suffering from that. Okay, proof of stake coins also have inflation and also have the Cantillon effect in play. And even Ethereum, that has the learning mechanism, uh, Ethereum is not free from the supply increase or the Cantillon effect of it, because what is being burned, I don't know if you understand how Ethereum work. I think it's better that I first explain that, right? So um, you can become a validator on Ethereum by staking your coins. You have Ether, you stake it in the protocol, you become a validator, and you will receive a yield, a reward from block subsidy from the work you are doing as a validator by validating transactions and by keeping your Ether illiquid, staked in the protocol. But users, when they use the Ethereum network, they pay fees, and this fees is burned, uh, which means that it is removed from the circulating supply. And this is a good thing because it kind of balance the inflation, okay? But it doesn't change much from our perspective of having an entity receiving fresh money that didn't exist before or that wasn't circulating before, uh, and can spend their money with an increased supply and with an increased purchasing power. Sorry. So when the Ethereum validator receives the inflation, even that at no point the supply will be burned. This validator is already benefiting from the Cantillon effect. Okay, this validator is already benefiting from the inflation. And it has a similar economy of scale as Bitcoin, because the more you stake, the more you receive as yield, and the more you can restake and become bigger and receive more and so on, and have a bigger power when liquidating and spending over the rest of the network. And how does this affect science? That's the whole point of this discussion. Well, similar to industry or lobby corporations or governments or central banks, the entity that has more purchasing power due to supply emission could theoretically, and that's very important, I'm talking about a theoretically aspect, they can drive science in the system they belong. And there is also an asymmetry. Similar to governments and large corporations, they can drive the funding of DeSci projects built in their ecosystem and can do that in their advantage. So I let this paragraph that I also think is very important. In summary, I will read it for you. In summary, where there is monetary distribution asymmetry, there is also an asymmetry of influence, and influence is an important word, in what is researched and what is not. Moreover, in technological advancements through science that may or may not benefit the private interests of the first entities to receive the inflation supply, which could be Ethereum validators, which could be Bitcoin miners, or which could be project owners that are issuing new tokens and whatsoever. And do I think this is inherently bad? No, I do not. We were discussing with Avi before going live. I don't think it's necessarily nefarious or necessarily bad. I think maybe issuing money can have their benefits. Maybe issuing money can have their purpose, like funding the project or funding the team behind the project. Or this is just something that the people behind the project wanted to do, and everybody involved in the project is aware of and are willing to be part of. If I understand that a project that Bitcoin or Ethereum have inflation and that some entities will have advantages over myself, and I am okay with that. there is no problem, right? So this is a voluntary decision. This is not what I want to talk about. I just want to talk about theoretical aspect of inflation can also affect science, even decentralized science, supported by the inflation of these chains, of these projects, and of these cryptocurrencies. And I hope I could make this clear, because now I want to introduce you to one cryptocurrency that doesn't suffer directly or are not in this higher scale as all the other cryptocurrencies that I don't know about. And this is why I'm a contributor. That is Nano. I don't think that I really don't like maximalism at all. I'm not a nano maximalist, and I just want to make it clear here because there is a lot of noise in cryptocurrency discussions, and I don't want this noise to affect our conversation. Um, I'm not a maximalist. I really like other currencies. I am a researcher. I am a journalist. I live in this industry by researching projects and understanding everything. So I really like other cryptocurrencies. I really like Monero. I really like other layer one chains that have DeFi, like Multiverse, like Radix, Near, and a lot of others. Okay, so I'm not an maximalist, but as we are talking about inflation, it's simply fair that we also talk about uh, a coin that has already been fully distributed. No more nano will ever be put in circulation from what already is in circulation right now. Because nano was fully distributed for free through captchas. Users could um, solve complex captchas and receive nano for free in between 2015 and 2017. Um, and because of that, the asymmetry in nano, the asymmetry of having entities receiving a fresh supply that can give them directly advantages through the Cantillon effect, doesn't exist or exists in a very lower level than everything else we have in crypto right now and in other monetary systems for what it's worth, like fiat or other monetary systems. So Nano has zero transaction fees. Nano has deterministic finality in half a second, which is very good for use. You can it's a very seamless experience of use. Uh, but also Nano is an open source software run by a permissionless and decentralized network of nodes, similar to Bitcoin, similar to Ethereum. Just want to make sure you understand that. And Nano is community driven. There are no venture capitalists backing Nano development right now. So there is no influence of external money, external capital joining the ecosystem with the intent of profit from these professional speculators that are venture capitalists, which I think is also a positive aspect when we are thinking about a currency that could be used to fund science and to fund centralized science. And also, curiosity, there is no more remaining funds from the development. So when the Nano was fully distributed then, in 2017, the Nano Foundation got 5% of the supply for itself, for development. And it happened over 6 years ago. All this fund has already been spent. So the asymmetry of having an entity that had a large chunk of the supply in reserves no longer exists for Nano. So we are more or less we equal right now. And Nano went through two market cycles, so the money got better distributed, which also lowers the Cantillon effect. Because if we go back to the Cantillon effect, we see that the longer the time money is circulating, the lower the purchasing power it will having in comparison to what it had during the emission. Okay, but this is also a true if we put this in a timeline manner. We look at this an horizontal timeline, we will see that the longer the time goes, the less effect the country loan effect has in the economy and in science funding for what it's worth. And this is also true for Bitcoin and for Ethereum and for other currencies. Okay, the longer the fresh issued Bitcoin is circulating and is already on the market, the lower the asymmetry it causes on, for example, funding science or funding research or allowing people to purchase things. And this is also valid for Ethereum, and this is also valid for Nano. The advantage of Nano is that the distribution already stopped so every day we go from here, it gets better. Meanwhile, Bitcoin or Ethereum or other currencies, and mainly fiat that are issued in a very higher level, every time the issuance occurs, this horizontal timeline gets resetted. It starts from the beginning for this chunk of the supply that was recently issued. So the supply that enters the market now will have to go through all the process. Everything else that has already been distributed went through. Is this clear? Do you have any questions at this point?
Yeah. So Benny, so what, as I get, Nano is directly tackling the problem, the root cause of inflation, right? By with a fully distributed tokenomics and so with I think this is a completely fear launched coin, right? You said there's no VC, no pre-launch.
Yeah, there was no ICO, right?
Yeah, there was no ICO. It was purely from thousands. It wasn't airdropped because they are. It usually has. You need to be holding a token before you receive a new token, so it's not an airdrop. People just join a file that was a website page, and they would solve captchas like Google Captcha, the prove you are a human thing, the prove you're not a robot. It was exactly, literally that. People would solve these captchas and would receive Nano in return. And were very complex captchas because it was designed to be bot proof. So people couldn't exploit that with a lot of bots to literally farm deposits. They were really hard to solve, and everybody with an internet connection could join during these 2 years and be part of this free distribution. And when the distribution ended, all the issuance also ended. So from the moment that the last person collected the last share of Nano from these faucets, no more Nano were distributed whatsoever. Besides the 5% I mentioned, Nano Foundation got for themselves, which is pretty low from what we see in the ecosystem. We see economics with 30%, like the best economics right now in this space, but we also have like 50%, 60% of the supply going directly to the foundation and to the team behind the project.
Yeah.
So the year 2140 that Bitcoin was predicted, like the last Bitcoin would be mined in 2140. So that is equivalent to 2017. So if that goal has to be reached.
Exactly. Yeah, more or less that. And the thing is that this is an experiment. Nano is an experiment. It's a live experiment that already works. I already use it as money. A lot of people do, and it already has market value. But just like Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's still an experiment. We don't fully yet understand the consequences of having a fully distributed supply. We are trying to understand it now. That's why theory like we're doing today is important. But it's also the same for Bitcoin, because we don't know what will happen when the last Bitcoin is distributed. Because, sorry?
It's very theoretical, not, I
Yeah,
don't think, yeah.
yeah, we don't know. Nobody knows, because all the network, all the system is built based in a business model when miners, and we have like huge companies and BlackRock investing in these mining companies. So they are for-profit companies. The system is built for profit. So we don't know what will happen when this profit ends, when this profit erases. This is an experiment as well. And on Nano, we do. Nano is working in these past 6 years without disinflation, and it still works. So this is a more battle-tested experiment in the sense of finite supply.
Yeah, and we say like Nano is what Bitcoin was supposed to be. So if you could just briefly talk about it, like the peer-to-peer, the white paper, the original Bitcoin white paper. So
Yeah, Bitcoin was created to solve the electronic cash system. So before Bitcoin, there were other attempts by the cypherpunk community. We had eCash, for example, and we had also, I don't remember now, in my mind, but we had other coins and other systems and other projects that came before Bitcoin with the intent of being digital money, and a digital money that was free from central banks and governments because of the vision of the cypherpunk movement. Okay, it is a political movement. So Bitcoin was one of these experiments that succeeded back then, but succeeded with some limitations because it has some problems in the peer-to-peer aspect. We have high fees, and we have low scalability, low throughput in the network. If everybody tries to choose Bitcoin at the same time, the network will halt because it can't sustain this usage. And not that Nano is perfect. Nano has its own limitations. We have physical limitations in Nano, just like we have in others. As I said, I really like Monero also, for example. But Monero has inflation. That's why I didn't bring Monero here for the discussion. But Monero also has this vision of being a peer-to-peer cash system. And Nano has it. And there are other projects that have it too, like Litecoin, like Bitcoin Cash, that is a direct fork from Bitcoin, Dash, and so many others. So in crypto, we have right now the DeFi and the Web3 solution. That is Ethereum, that is Solana, Cardano, Radix, that I like, Near, and Multiverse, and a lot of others that are also uh, building the DeSci. And I think DeSci is mostly concentrated in these layer one chains, right? Because they offer programmability, and this is great for DeSci. I'm not saying it's bad, okay? This is great for DeSci because you can program smart contracts and have some automation in a lot of things that may be useful for the research environment, for the science environment. But we also have these coins like Bitcoin was supposed to be, but my personal opinion, it fails in being. That is to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And we have coins like Nano that I like and I contribute because I like the project. So I'm volunteer in the Nano Foundation. That is trying to address this vision of being purely money, a purely transfer of value. If I wanted to send you Nano from here, from Brazil right now, you would receive it in maximum 1 minute because the network right now is under saturation. We have like a lot of people, a lot of transactions going on in the network right now. So the transactions are taking a bit longer than the half second that we have on average, but it's still faster than everything else. So if I want to send you value, monetary value now, for example, to fund your project, you can speak.
yeah. Actually, I just wanted to just briefly mention that I was able to successfully purchase some Nano despite of that attack that happened. So and just wanted to.
Yeah,
So
I'm continually using it.
yeah, yeah.
So One use that we have from Nano is nano-gpt.com. Is nanogpt. Nano-gpt.com is a website you can access. It's a website that connects an API from GPT-4 Turbo or other AI models, and you can pay it for Nano, and it's very cheap for each prompt. So you pay as you use it. You have the characteristics of Nano that help with microtransactions, like the zero transaction fees and the fast finality, and you can pay per prompt. Every time you prompt the AI model or generate an image through Dolly 3, for example, you pay it for Nano, and you have the immediate response from the application. So I could, for example, fund your projects from Brazil, and in a matter of seconds, and you could take this Nano you received from funding and, for example, generate a nice image to promote your funding campaign better. And you would be already using this peer-to-peer money. So that's what Avi mentions of being what Bitcoin was supposed to be. That is this peer-to-peer electronic cash system vision. Bitcoin diverted from that, and it's fine if you like what Bitcoin is becoming. I don't, because that's not my focus, but it's fine. Okay. The thing is that Nano is now a currency, and like others too, that you can adopt right now in DeSci. If you have a project or if you want to fund a project, you can do it with Nano right now. You don't have to sign or subscribe for anything. You just need to start accepting Nano or donating Nano for the projects you like.
You can
And
send it up to, yeah.
doing
You can
that
send it up
without inflation.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention like the 30 decimal places. So it's a very unique thing that Nano has. So,
Yeah, Nano can divide.
yeah, yeah.
Can we step back to the previous slide?
Mike, do you have the mic? Yeah.
I think it's working.
Oh, it's switched off. Okay.
It goes, but I think the battery is low.
Oh,
Every time I'm trying to switch it on, it's going on.
yeah. I think you can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can we step back to the previous slide? Previous slide.
Yeah, the previous slide. Yeah. This is-
Anyway, I will ask it. So, Nano
I think
still
it's not
runs on
audible.
blockchain, right?
It's not a blockchain. Yeah, it's a block lattice. Yeah.
So I just
Architecture
wanted to
is
ask,
different, yeah.
like, how is it? There is no transaction fee, and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
is it so fast?
Yeah. So Vinny, did you get the question?
Yeah, how is it so fast,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how this model works? I don't think we have enough time to go through
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I
We
just
can.
received a warning, but I can briefly talk about that. I just put some links in the screen, because you can take notes on that and learn better about Nano. You can access, for example, docs.nano.org, and learn how the structure works. But uh, it is fast because it is asynchronous. So different from Bitcoin, that we have a synchronous blockchain that goes in a timeline, in a time chain, as Bitcoin advocates say. Nano validates transactions without in a synchronous way. So each node will add the transactions in their ledger at different times. It allows the network to reach finality faster. But this is not just it. Okay, there is a lot of details and technicalities
There's
that
a yeah.
better
There's a
if you read
GIF,
about that.
there's an animation. There's a very popular animation comparing Nano and Bitcoin. So if we see that, we get a lot of answers. Like just observing it, so we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, the docs.nano.org should be a very easy page to understand. So the content there should be easily digested. If not, please feedback to us, so because we need to change it. People need to understand how Nano works by reading the documentation. So feel free to have fun by understanding Nano and learn about Nano if you have liked what I presented here today. And also make sure to follow these steps. I think I'll make this presentation available for you in the Telegram group, and I may also post it in my Twitter, in my X account, so you can take a better look at it later. But here is how, for example, you could start funding your research with Nano. Follow these steps and let the community know if you have any doubts. I'm also very active and responsive on Twitter, on X, so you can also feel free to tweet me there. And also in Telegram, ping me or tag me in the Telegram channel of the DeSci India, DeSci Kolkata event. Okay, I am there and I'll be there answering questions as well. But I think it's mostly it. Yeah, so that was a nice talk, and I think we may wrap that up now.
Can you hear me? Vinny?
I can.
Yeah. So Vinny, I have one or two questions. Like, so Nano is in total circulation, right? It's in complete circulation. So, okay. So I think this is the only cryptocurrency which is in full circulation, if I'm not wrong. Like most of what I have gathered so far, I have researched many of them. Few of them, the very good, some of them have 80% in circulation, 70%. Some tokenomics is very bad. They're only 10% in circulation. So I think Nano perhaps is a unique case where the every coin is in circulation. Am I right?
I'm not sure if the only one, because there are a lot of coins right now. For example, the RD, the token built in the Bitcoin ordinals chain, the RD coin, it's already fully circulating. So there are others right now, but I think mostly meme coins. Or
Okay.
RD has no use. It's just a meme coin. So, but yeah, just not to say that Nano is the only one, because I don't think it is, but it's the only one with this vision of being used as money. That's for sure.
It's so the model is a completely deflationary model, right? So, but
It is deflationary if you consider people losing their coins, but we can't actually measure that. So I rather just say that it is fully distributed. I don't like saying it's deflationary because we can't measure the deflation. If we could measure it, I would say it is. But in practical, it may be because people lose keys all the time. People lose their seeds and their wallets all the time. So people may be losing Nano that will never ever be able to be retrieved. So it may be deflationary practically, but as I can't measure this deflation, I rather not say it is.
okay. So it's a proof of work coin, or it's a proof of
It has its own model. As it has no inflation, it has no stake. It would be a proof of stake, but you don't stake Nano. You don't need to lock your Nano to validate. The Nano work in a open representative voting model. So every balance liquid can vote or delegate their vote to a representative, and this representative will be validating, and everybody can become a representative if they want. But I really think I really don't want to take more time from the next guest. Avi,
Right.
be free to feel free to wrap that up if you want. I can
Yeah.
keep answering questions here if you want, because I
Thanks.
love that, but
Thanks
I
a
just
lot.
want to. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks so much, Vinny. Thanks so much. I think it's pretty late right there. So let's wrap up and let's continue the conversation in a later session, in later sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And I love talking about that. So feel free to
Yeah.
reach me. Thank you very much for listening to me, everybody, and for participating. That was a really fun talk we had today.
Thanks.